Bai Jinsu, a young man standing on the edge of a bridge, ready to jump off to end his life, never expected his life would bring him here. A few hours ago, a couple of men banged on his apartment door, shouting at him to come out of his rat hole and open the door. The neighboring lady requests that they slow down a bit as she is trying to put her baby to sleep, but they apologize nicely and tell the reason for their arrival. These men want their 900 million won back from Bai Jinsu, which is a pretty huge amount. Suddenly, a car honks at someone on the street. They watch in the light that Bai Jinsu has blocked its way. As soon as those guys see him in headlights, they begin chasing him, but it stops when they find a whole street blocked for a shoot. There, they lose Jinsu, but Jinsu tries to blend in with the crew and celebrities. Then he silently walks away from the crowd, remembering the day when his friend persuaded him to invest with him. He guaranteed him a lot of profit over investment and an early retirement, which was way more attractive to Jinsu. So he took loans from banks and loan sharks, and ended up losing all the investment as his investor did not contact him or even pick up the call. All he thinks about is paying back the loan and getting free of the torture by loan sharks. But that much money is only possible when he wins a big lottery. But the chances are barely 1 in 8 million. The worst part is that he also gave his severance to the investor that he got from 10 years of work, and the guy ran off. Jinsu desperately watches the screen as he still thinks that he can win big amounts just because he cannot be the loser. Now that he works for minimum wages at a grocery store that is only sufficient to pay for his groceries, he simply has no idea how he will pay the debt. He now repents. So why did he spent all the time just completing his college graduation and never listening to his grandma, who suggested he learn a skill. Now, he is a useless brat with a degree, and all the skilled people are getting hired every day. But for now, he needs to figure out a way to land a high-paying job, like a stock exchange office. Unfortunately, he could only get a window cleaning job outside the stock exchange building, where he has to work 4 hours a day, hanging from a building and do the window cleaning. That's why he ended up getting on the edge of a river to commit suicide that night, as all his attempts to pay off his debts have failed. And now he wants to get rid of his miserable life. But just as he is about to jump down, his mobile beeps. Someone has just deposited a huge amount in his bank account, and he is doing it repeatedly. Next up, Jinsu receives the message to get in the car if he wants to receive more money. In a moment, a limousine stops and its door opens. Jinsu hesitates for a moment, but he sits inside anyway. He tries to thank whoever saved his life and deposited money, but no one replies, and the car stops in front of a big theater. Walking on the red carpet, Jinsu reaches an empty theater room where a table was placed in the center of the stage. Surprisingly, it had money, a letter, and a bunch of numbers on it. Instinctively, he opens the letter first, which reads that whoever brought him here wants his time to play this game, and in return, they will give him a lot of money, free food, and accommodation. But the game will end if the time runs out or anyone gets expired. Jinsu gets so confused to think of their motives behind it. He's supposed to pick one numbered card to enter the show, but just as he decides to run away, taking money placed on the table, he receives a message from the store owner telling him that he is free for the entire week as he just paid the whole week's wages. That makes him stop and rethink his decision to walk away from the room. No one will ever notice he has been gone for some time, and he was going to end his life anyway. Hence, what if he plays the game for a little while? Getting near the table, he picks number 3, and as instructed, he enters the area behind the red curtain. That's when the 8th show begins. Taking the stairs, he enters a grand room with a few swings and artificial food shops. The door gets locked behind him, and the 3rd floor begins inspecting the area. His card gives him entry into the room on the 3rd floor. The small room has a lot of cameras fixed everywhere, along with an artificial window. Suddenly, the hood door opens, and he receives a rule book along with some clothes. Jinsu reads the instructions, saying that they can contact them to order anything via intercom. However, he will pay from the prize money shown on the screen. Moreover, it is prohibited to take any purchases out of the room and break the cameras. The worst rule was that if anyone violated the rules, his half-price money would be deducted. Jinsu was given a short time window to change the clothes, but his time runs out and a number of lights start blinking. He hardly could get the new dress from the shed and was so surprised to see the first deposit in his account. It was 30,000 won per minute, and he calculates that on average, he will earn more than 40 million won per day. That's mind-boggling money, which is easy too. Suddenly, he realizes that he has to use the washroom, but there is no washroom. Hence, he decides to buy some things to warm him off and something to take a piss in. But when he places his order via intercom, the display shows a 100 times higher price of any item. That startles Jinsu, and he hangs up the call instead of buying the necessary stuff. Now he truly understands what the special rate means in the rulebook. Anyhow, he ought to buy the toilet paper and get it for 100 times more than the regular amount. Hence, to save money, he decides to buy a bunch of cardboard and newspapers to warm him. Jinsu mocks the game designers as they don't know he can live roughly too, and in the end, he will come out of the game as a rich man. He wakes up in the middle of the night as he can no longer control the piss and demands a water bottle to take a piss. After a few hours, He wakes up as daylight enters his room, but the scoreboard makes him really happy, as every passing day makes him more and more rich, and now he has to spend a couple of weeks here to pay off his debt. Suddenly, he hears the voice of a woman from downstairs and looks from the balcony. There are 3 others who welcome him, and Jinsu is surprised to find that the swimming pool, the sunlight, the shops, and the pockets on their shirts are all fake. Moreover, the time that showed 24 hours last day has shown an increased time now. The girl in number 8 is not properly dressed. The genius-looking guy number 7 assumes that there are more rules to the game while the ticking clock keeps adding time, and they will be trapped forever in this area. The only remaining participants are a girl in number 2 and a guy in number 1. Now the list of all players is complete. They explore the place, and the whole area has no washroom or plumbing area to drain the waste. Number 1 says that he just bought the bags and toilet papers, which anyone can use if they want, but they will have to keep the waste in their room as nothing is allowed to be taken out of it. Number 7 brings their attention to the intercom booth in the common area where they can purchase things. But knowing that everything is too expensive, the showrunners definitely don't want them to buy a lot of stuff. The 5th floor suggests trying to order something so they know how they are going to pay in the common area. 6th floor promptly orders a lighter and a pack of cigarettes. Surprisingly, they would have to pay with time in the common area instead of money. The 5th floor gets the idea to buy things in a common area instead of ordering in their own rooms to save money. But the 6th floor disagrees, as that way, the time will run out quickly and they cannot earn more. The nerdy-looking 7th floor can understand that whoever runs the show is doing it for mere entertainment, and there are people who have a lot of money that this amount will only equal to their pocket change. He wants everyone to sit down and buy the necessary stuff with cooperation, but that turned out to be a tricky thing, as no one agreed with what the other one said. Hence, all they could buy in the common room were waste buckets and plastic bags along with cigarettes. Quite a lot of time passed, and they did not receive any food as promised. It turns out that the girl on the 8th Saint floor got 12 packs of food earlier, which she did not know were for all of them. Hence, she tasted each box and saved the rest in her room. She even used drinking water to wash up. That makes Jinsu angry, as she acted dumb and selfish for not sharing the food. But she allows them to get their food by going into her room, as no one is allowed to bring things out of their room. The genius 7th 3 floor guy steps in to come up with the solution that the delivery chute is in each room. Hence, she can send food through that route. But what is the mystery behind the 12 meals, as they are not equal? They ask the 8th floor girl to send the food to everyone's room, to which she agrees. And the rest of the players want permission to go to the 8th floor and check how the delivery queue works. She allows them to follow her, but the staircase to the 8th floor was too much for the one Saint floor man with a painful leg. Hence, Jinsu offers to give him a hand and helps him get up. But another surprise awaits them on the 8th floor, as this one is a huge room. Also, she earns way more than everyone else each minute. The 1st floor gets 10,000 per minute, which is too little compared to the amount the 8th floor earns. The 8th floor is a cheerful, smiley-faced girl who entered the limousine happily and gets inside the big theater as if she were entering a carnival. She immediately chooses number 8 and runs to go behind the curtain. The 8th floor gets so excited to see a lot of enjoyable stuff in the common area and jumps inside the swimming pool without knowing that it's an artificial setting. Hence, she ends up with her nose bleeding, but she does not care for it much and takes stairs to reach her room. By entering her number 8 card, she gets inside room number 8 and relaxes on the floor for a bit. After removing her fancy party dress, she heads towards the closet, where the show clothes are waiting for her. Suddenly, the lights started blinking, which was a sign that she had to change her clothes before showtime starts. She runs excitedly and gets the clothes like a happy little child. She is already loving the show, and after keeping her outside clothes in the chute, she put them on fire before its door closed. Once again, the door opens, and she receives nothing, which bores her. But now, as the number goes up on the scoreboard in her room, she starts using the intercom and orders all the stuff she needs. The 8th floor girl immediately purchases a fancy mattress, pillows, microfiber quilts, and a toilet and does not care how the money goes down each second. That night, she keeps shopping until the scoreboard goes to 0, and then she goes to sleep. What she does with the food is also more interesting, as she only barely gets a spoon from each plate and keeps the food aside. But once again, she orders the bathtub to wash up with the drinking water, totally unaware of the fact that it's for the rest of the show players. Everyone is a bit angry looking at the size of room 8, and on top of it, the giggle and laughter of the 8th floor girl annoy them even more. Now they want to know the injustice of the prize money they are getting. It's weird and unjust that everyone is not getting the same amount. Starting from the 1st floor, who gets 10,000, the 2nd gets 20,000, the 3rd floor gets 30,000, the 4th floor gets 50,000, the 5th floor gets 80,000, the 6th floor gets 130,000, the 7th floor gets 210,000, and finally, the 8th floor gets 340,000 one each minute. Noticing the pattern of the play, The genius 7th floor guy comes up with the explanation that each number is getting up by adding the previous number. For example, if the first floor gets 1, then add 1 to it, and the second floor will get 2. Now if we add 2, then the third floor will get 3. Hence, we add 3 and 2, and the number for the fourth floor becomes 5. This goes up in this way till the 8th floor, and it's called the Fibonacci sequence, that we can see in everyday things too, where everything divided by the preceding number always gives up 1.6 as an answer. The show designers have kept it that way because this sequence looks pleasing to the human eye. But the 7th floor is puzzled as to what show designers want from them. The 4th floor still can't absorb the unjust division, but the rude 6th floor guy shuts her up and asks them to come along and check everyone's rooms. As they go down each room, the prize money reduces along with the size of each room. Finally, the first floor, which gets 10,000, has the smallest room, whose roof is so low to keep their heads high. But the first floor calms the 4th floor, who keeps complaining about why she picked the card 4 while she can pick something else. First floor shares that he is satisfied with his choice. As with his bad leg, it would have been difficult to go upstairs each time. Suddenly, they hear the laughter of an 8th floor girl jumping on a trampoline. She seems to be enjoying the whole thing, and jumping on the trampoline was her workout to keep herself smart. Now they have to solve the problem of dividing 12 food boxes while they are 8. Hence, the genius 7th floor gets their consent to agree on the proposal that everyone gets their meal box when the delivery courier moves down. Whoever feels hungry even after eating their box can go to the first floor and get an extra meal. They all sit on the first floor, and after the food ends, the 3rd floor's Jinsu joins the 7th floor in the smoking corner. The 7th floor feels quite scary, not knowing what showrunners want from them, but that was not quite what irritated the rest of the players. The girl on the 2nd floor notices that their time is about to end and they have only 15 minutes left on the clock in the common room, which means someone has made purchases. Just as expected, the 8th floor used to spend all the time purchasing fancy clothes for herself. She did that in the common room, because if she bought things in her room, she could show them to nobody. The short-tempered 2nd floor gets so upset as there is no way they can get the time back. But the 8th floor is not as dumb and silly as she looks. She tells everyone that if they use the stairs, then they will gain more time so they can enhance their time on the show. The 2nd floor gets aggressive and wants to know the secret. She knows that climbing stairs would increase time, but she demands an apology from the 2nd floor before telling this secret. Impulsive 4th floor girl apologizes instead, and watching that time is running backward quickly, the bad leg 1st floor guy starts running on the stairs. Everyone follows him as they really want to stay in their game, increase the time, and make as much prize money as they can. But it looks like their running makes no difference because the clock keeps going down and shows the number 0, which means it's the end of the show. But suddenly the light turns up on the screen and they have gained 24 hours. Now that they know that by climbing the stairs, they can get the money. The 7th floor wants to climb up and down as a team and work together to increase time. Ultimately, Jinsu returns to his room to use the basket toilet, but his tissue size is insufficient to wipe him. Hence, he decides to get the big tissue roll, but watching its price, he refuses instantly. Somehow, all the residents of each floor have bought things for their comfort. The next morning, their eyes opened with the artificial sunlight, and they gathered in the common room to start the day's drill of climbing up and down the stairs, which exhausts everyone too much, but they got the time added on the clock. On the other hand, the 7th floor is trying to understand the mystery behind increasing the time just by climbing the stairs, while all others eat the food in the 1st floor room. Also, they seem tired from eating the same kind of food each day, and the food here is not enough to fill Jinsu and a few others who get hungry quickly. The 6th floor's rude guy wants to make teams out of 8 people, so each team works one day while the other one rests. Furthermore, the 4 people on the working team get the extra meal boxes too. That sounds fair to everyone, so now the 7th floor wants to divide the group based on even and odd numbers. But the problem is that the 2nd floor does not want to stick with any group longer, and says that she would keep switching groups. Each group's, made up of 2 girls and 2 boys, started working as a team the following day, and making groups proved very useful to them, because whoever works hard gets more food and a full day of rest following the workday. What else could they want? But one day the 1st floor's leg gets hurt. A man from the 6th floor comes to give him a helping hand to help him get up, but instead, he twitches his wrist and advises him to get up immediately for the day's work. The 2nd floor feels so bad for him and offers to perform the 1st floor's duty in his place. The 2nd floor looks so beaten up after the day's work. On the next turn, the 1st floor looks so miserable trying to climb the stairs with his bad leg. This time, Jinsu offers him help and goes up and down as many times as he can. That evening, the fourth floor shamed the first floor for eating 2 boxes when he wasn't even working. Ashamed of not realizing that he should offer his extra box to the third floor person who ran for him, he asks him to eat his share. But the second floor forbids him as they didn't help the first floor for the greed of reward. Hence, the third floor gets back to his floor with a big appetite but just a single box to fill his appetite. With the burning anger, he sketches the man who took all his money and left him penniless. Now he is earning by climbing stairs like a pig. He feels so helpless and falls asleep. The next day, his eyes opened with a clicking sound of the delivery chute opening. Someone sent all their waste down to his room. It turns out that the 8th floor wants to keep her room clean. Hence, she ordered to send all the waste down. That day, the first floor goes to each person's room and offers to volunteer to sort their waste bags in his room. He is not a suitable person to climb the stairs each day, but he can handle waste very well. Finally, he has found a role and is satisfied with it, and their little community has become more sophisticated. The 8th floor sends a note down to the first floor saying, "Thank you." They buy the toilet supplies and toiletries from the common area's intercom, which the first floor delivers to everyone. But now the first floor is filled with all kinds of waste, and the place where everyone used to eat sitting together has become so filthy that the third floor's Jinsu nearly vomited when the first floor guys started handling waste bags in the middle of their meal. In the game, another surprise is awaiting them as the 7th floor notices that the time is not adding up in the same amount as it used to by climbing the stairs, but it definitely increases with something else that they don't know yet. 8th floor and 2nd floor get into an argument when the 8th floor girl tells her that she is quitting climbing stairs forever because her time is worth more money, while the people on the lower floor must keep doing their jobs. It was harsh but true, and the 8th floor is also too smart for the rest of them. But for now, they have to run fast to increase the time on the clock, which is quickly running out. Even at midnight, they don't gain any minutes. But since it's bedtime, they all stop for a while. But surprisingly, the clock starts showing the time increases when climbing has not added any minutes. So they all head to their rooms to rest. The next morning, the 5th floor shouts to wake them up, as they have only left 30 minutes on the clock. They start running like crazy, and suddenly a 4th floor girl falls down and has seizures. As a nurse, the 5th floor girl instructs everyone to take her to the common area and wants to order a few medical supplies to treat her. But since the time is short and ordering from the common counter will cost them time, the selfish 6th floor staff stops them from ordering any medicine by force. The 2nd floor and 1st floor stop on the 6th floor, and the 3rd floor immediately gets to the intercom to order phenytoin. His nose bleeds, but the medicine comes in a moment, and they hear the annoying laughter of the 8th floor, because she just noticed that the time on the clock had increased by 40 hours. It's now that the 7th floor gets the point of the show designers that they don't want any hard work. Instead, all they want is violence, which would increase their time on the show, and hence the money will keep increasing with time. A man on the 7th floor enters the big theater. After reading the instructions on the table, he simply picks a number and goes behind the red curtains. He is a brainy man who tries to inspect everything before barely batting an eye to react. So he discreetly enters room number 7, and as per the instruction, he changes the dress. And with each passing minute, he calculates his prize money, which is 210,000 won. He also calculates that anything he buys will be available at 100 times its actual price. So to plan, think, and strategize, he orders a table and chair along with some stationery and writes down his observations, which includes the number of cameras in the room, and he notices that something is ticking above, and as soon as he turns around to see, the ticking signs. Knowing that running is not useful anymore, they hold a meeting in the common room, where the 7th floor puts forward the point that running up and down the stairs is now useless. The show designers found it quite entertaining for some time, but then they got bored of it. Now the only thing that increased the time span was getting hurt. That does not matter if the 4th floor got the seizure naturally, or the 3rd floor got the nosebleed. But in the end, all the episodes created drama and thrills, which intrigued the audience. They decided to perform entertaining things the next day, while the very thought of doing entertaining things gave the 3rd floor a fit of anxiety. Hence, he decided to do some entertainment in his own room by getting on top of the toilet seat and eating in front of the camera, like people do in the ASMR YouTube videos. Suddenly someone knocks on the door and it's on the 7th floor. They smoke together like always. The smarter 7th floor admires the 3rd floor for his empathetic nature. The way he helped the 1st floor earlier was impressive. But the 3rd floor admires the 7th floor for showing some grace by not sending the waste bags down to the 1st floor. It seems like both of them are doing good things in their own capacities. But now, the 7th floor discusses the real threat that simple task performance like running and getting rewarded is not going to work anymore. As per human nature, they laugh at first at their entertaining jokes, but there is a limit to it, and they would like to see something more unexpected from their side. As soon as the participants understand the show format, their audience will reward them with more time only when they show violence. The 7th floor knows that they will have to go to the root of violence ultimately, but they need to start it slowly. The next day, as expected, the 8th floor suggested a wrestling game, and as the 3rd floor and 7th floor planned, they refused the suggestion because they wanted to go slowly. The 7th floor requests the 3rd floor to keep their conversation between them. Hence, the 3rd floor, terrified to the core of what might happen next, suggests doing skits as entertainment for the next couple of days. Some suggested a dating show, but they all agreed on the talent show in the end, where they would all display their talents and add a few hours. The 1st floor immediately wants to try this idea then and there. Hence, the 7th floor takes the lead and orders the flute from the common room delivery courier. Surprisingly, instead of using his mouth to play it, he plugs cotton in one nostril, puts the flute in the other, and plays a wonderful tune from the nose. Everyone loves it and applauds when it ends. Their plan succeeded, and they now have 20 more hours added to their time, so they agree on holding the talent show the next day. But the 7th floor wants to stop them to discuss how long they will keep earning the time. He wants everyone to come up with a time limit. While everyone is getting money and becoming rich, the upper floors are earning more, so they might want to step out earlier. So the 2nd floor gives the idea to ask the 1st floor when he wants to leave the show because he earns the minimum amount each day. The 1st floor wants to stay there for 2.5 weeks, as he will earn 1 billion. In the meantime, when the 1st floor earns 1 billion, the rest of them will earn 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, and 34 billion. Hence, they start earning the time by holding the variety show and buying some needed stuff from the common room. Watching everyone order their necessary items from the show, Jinsu from the 3rd floor realizes that he actually doesn't have any talent. He is the one who has always wanted to stay low and has no idea what he's going to show. Hence, he spends the whole night in panic inside his room. In the following day's show, the 5th floor sings a very nice song that earns her 10 hours. The 6th floor breaks a set of tiles with one punch and earns 15 hours. Then the 2nd floor comes and breaks wooden boards and tiles with kicks and punches. Afterwards, the 4th floor sings a song in a ridiculous voice that earns only 1 hour and 50 minutes, but she feels embarrassed and gets on the slide. By coming all the way down from the swing, she only gets 5 more minutes. Finally, the 3rd floor gets the courage and comes in the middle to perform and get rid of the anxiety. With his weird dance, he only adds 18 minutes and sits beside the 1st floor. Finally, the 1st floor comes in the middle to perform. He bends his head down and gets up with a Joker's nose. The entertaining Joker's skit looks amusing to everyone, and they laugh. It adds 30 hours, and watching him perform well gives the 3rd floor another heartbreak. The only remaining person is on the 8th floor, who wants to perform her skit in her room privately by getting intimate with the 7th floor. But he gently refuses, so she goes to the 6th floor, who agrees promptly. The rest of the participants feel so weird, but 6th and 8th floor's intimate act adds 69 hours to the clock. That night, the 3rd floor watches a weird dream where the 8th floor wants to get intimate with him and hugs him from his back. He wakes up extremely terrified when he watches the 6th floor in his dream too. All participants have earned 5 days by performing, while the 6th floor makes fun of the 3rd floor for poor talent. Now that their running duty is over, the 1st floor could not do it and traded his duty for collecting waste bags. He now wants to ask if it is still his duty to hold the bags, because he is running out of space in his room due to its smallest size. So to decide on the matter and make the process more fun and entertaining, the 4th floor suggests playing a game named Whose Room is the Bathroom? All the participants agree, and the process will be to vote on the matter. The 2nd floor thinks it's useless to vote on this matter, and she holds a rough argument with the 6th floor on the matter until the 7th floor stops them. He asks those who want to vote on the matter to raise their hands. In the end, all of them agree when, in his heart, the 3rd floor thinks that he is the worst in any kind of talent. Hence, people might want him to store the waste in his room. In their separate capacities, everyone starts talking about who will vote for whom. In this process, the 4th floor goes to the 3rd floor to ask him, and the 7th floor to vote for the 8th floor. She gets out of the room and finds the 1st floor wanting to come into the 3rd floor's room, as his room stinks. But she discreetly takes him away and does not let him know what they are planning on doing. Her point is that anyone who earns more is more responsible for the well-being of people lower in the ranks. Hence, it's the 8th floor's responsibility to take care of them. They almost agree with her opinion, and she also convinces the 1st floor to vote for 8th, and now she goes to convince the 2nd floor, who already manages her waste herself, and is not interested in the process of voting anymore. So without talking, she sends the 4th floor away. Meanwhile, when the 4th floor is collecting votes against the 8th floor, in his room, the 6th floor man arrives to get to the 7th floor to talk. As soon as they go, the 4th floor wants to make sure that the 7th floor will vote for the 8th floor as he trusts that upright guy. But in reality, the 6th floor convinces the 7th floor to vote for the 3rd floor. The voting process begins, and they vote anonymously. In the end, there is 1 black vote, 3 votes for the 3rd floor, and 4 for the 8th floor. The angry 6th floor shuffles the papers to make sure that the 8th floor won, and her room will become the bathroom. 8th floor is so happy for winning the vote, and after the clapping, they receive a number of hours added up to their total time. While the 3rd floor is worrying, he was anticipating 2 votes, but who was the 3rd one is beyond his comprehension. He asks on the 7th floor who actually was the 3rd voter, but he dodges the question. After the voting ends, the 1st floor sorts all the waste to send to the 8th floor and thanks the 2nd floor girl for what she thought for him. The 2nd floor sympathizes with him, as he has been living in the worst possible condition in this building. Even though she wanted to vote for the 8th floor for her arrogance and selfishness, she chose not to. But the 1st floor does not hold any grudges against her because she has a big room, enough to become a bathroom for all of them. But it's time that the table turns as the 8th floor, who seem happy with the voting process, does not hand over the room's key to use the bathroom. She smiles instead of getting worried when everyone surrounds her to pressurize her and accept their decision. But she mocks all of them, telling them that they are drowning in this boat and that she has the command of the elite ship, and she goes back to her room. The 1st floor thinks she is acting too worried about the voting decision. Hence, they should give her time to rethink. The 4th floor, who plotted against her, was frenzied at her attitude, but 6th floor and 7th floor walked away, knowing that the 8th floor was capable of taking this decision and making them suffer. The next morning reveals the result of annoying the 8th floor. The delivery chute opens in each room with empty water bottles and no food in the food tray. Ultimately, it's loud and clear that she has power and is better than the rest of them. That's the day the 4th floor remembers when she first entered the game. She picked the 8th number first and went all the way behind the red curtains. But she returned to change her card to 4th and got inside her room on the 4th floor. She gets startled to learn about the price of a mattress and blanket and changes her decision to get a blanket. She only orders a sleeping bag and a few sticky notes. The 4th floor girl has a ritual of writing on sticky notes each night and crying. The scene switches to the present day, when it's been 3 days and housemates have not received any food or water. The 3rd floor is in pretty bad condition, as he cannot starve. Food is his weakness, and knowing the basic facts, he knows that after 3 days without water, a human dies. The 6th floor angrily throws a ball at the 8th floor's door, asking her to open it. She has not shown up in the last 3 days, and every plea has gone futile. It seems she has no mercy for the rest of the housemates. The 4th floor requested with all her heart sitting in front of the 8th floor, but nothing happened. The 3rd floor has no energy to walk down the stairs. Hence, he crept his way downstairs. It's settled now that 8th floor has power over every individual in the house for having control over the basic necessity, which is food. After starving for so long, the 5th floor is hallucinating and sees the 8th floor girl in the imagination that she brought all the food boxes and water. The 1st floor man calms her down and brings her back to reality. Finally, the 2nd floor gets up, as she has reached her limits and wants to end the show with her method. The 6th floor tries to stop her, as he doesn't want the show to end just yet, but she sees no point in suffering for money if they die of starvation here. But as she starts moving ahead, the 1st floor curls up her legs, begging to stop as he badly needs the 1,000,000 won. So Jinsu says that he will keep all the garbage and waste in his room. He deserves it because he has no other talent. He will do this to save everyone and end his suffering. Right now, he can't think of anything. But at the same time, the 4th floor speaks up, saying that she will share the waste too, as she also stinks at showing any kind of talent. And on top of that, she plotted against the 8th floor girl that led them to this misery. She sits near the 3rd floor and begins crying. They hold each other's hands and start walking towards the 8th floor to discuss their decision. But genius 7th floor stops them, as he now somewhat knows about the psychology of the 8th floor, and that she will not respond to the pleading and emotions. He rationally tells her that they have realized that her talent was top-notch in the talent show, which earned them a lot of time. This voting process brought an insult to her status, for which they are utterly sorry. A moment later, she opens the door and the 7th floor startles to look at the amazing items in her room. It seems that she has all the luxury ordered in it, and is very happy that everyone else has realized their wrong decision. To the 7th floor's surprise, she was doing weird stunts as exercise in her lavish room. The 8th floor finds the food abstinence punishment quite justified for the housemates. Now she has accepted the apology, but she wants to buy clothes from the common room delivery chute as their punishment. The 7th floor could not refuse, and she wants them to play the games of her choice. It seems that it's her world where she is having so much fun, enjoying new clothes and receiving praise, while all others just wait for her mood to change to receive food and water after 3 days. The 4th floor acts as her assistant, being praised for her choices and dresses. The 2nd floor could not digest the fact that the 8th floor is not equal to the rest of them, but the genius man on the 7th floor makes a point by saying that they apologized and went to her, not the other way around, and she doesn't care if anyone would have died. Finally, they got the food, and nothing is better in this world than the food for the 3rd floor. But then he received the poop and waste bags from the rest of the floors, which are too much to handle, and he is already nauseating. The fourth floor promised to keep some waste on her floor, but she did not do that, while the second floor and first floor did not send their waste bags as they were holding on to their waste from day one. The next day, the 8th floor comes up with a game where they will shuffle the balls, and whoever picks the game with the word K will be the king. The king can order anyone about anything, and they must obey the king. In the first shuffling, the 5th floor gets the king ball and asks his chosen numbers to just hold hands for longer. They are on the 6th and 7th floors, and get uncomfortable in the moment by holding each other's hands. Next, the 4th floor becomes the king, and she asks the 6th and 7th number ball holders to kiss each other. With a bit of hesitation, the 5th floor kisses the 1st floor. The 3rd time they shuffle, the 8th floor gets the ball with K on it. She wants the 2nd floor and the 3rd floor's Jinsu to kiss each other, but the 2nd floor refuses to do it. She demands a change of task. Hence, the king tells the 2nd and 6th floors to fight each other until one of them wins. The 2nd floor is a trained fighter, and gives the 6th floor a very tough time by not letting him even touch. But suddenly the 6th floor finds out that the 2nd floor's hand is sprained, and he starts hitting at exactly that hand. He starts by punching her first, and hitting her so much that she starts bleeding. The 8th floor does not order them to stop as king, and 6th floor keeps punching her second face until she completely blacks out. Finally, the 3rd floor and 7th floors intervene and hold the 6th floor to stop. The showrunners loved the violence and added 50 hours to the board. Later, the 5th floor, who was a former trained nurse, puts a bandage on the 2nd floor's hand and cries, as she has a very tender heart. The 7th floor wants them to rethink what they are doing, as he is strongly against violence. So once again, the 4th floor gives another plan. Instead of starting a fight with each other, they can let the king assign a task. Whoever refuses to do this will receive a penalty. As a penalty, 4th floor already had bought a teaser, which she watched on YouTube videos. She assures them that the shock only lasts less than a second. No one has tried the taser yet, but the 8th floor immediately wants to try it. One by one, everyone agrees, and the 6th floor tries it in his hand, which looks terrible to the 3rd floor. He does the math to see how many times he can get the punishment. The chance is only 1 in 8, but he still has no idea about the intensity of the taser. He keeps walking in his room with sheer anxiety and has psychological diarrhea from thinking about it. The 2nd floor looks so terrible from the last day's fight, but she is all set to play the game once again. They shuffle the balls and the 8th floor gets the king ball once again. She commands the 3rd floor to grope the 5th floor. 3rd floor feels so ashamed, and even after waiting for a while, he would not do it and demand a penalty. He is ready for taser. The 7th floor asks him to sit down, as it seems that he has an idea how much it will hurt him. As soon as the 5th floor touches the taser with the 3rd floor's neck, he falls unconscious, and urine flows out of his urinary bag. This insane vact adds 60 hours to their account. Some of them carry the 3rd floor to his room, and he feels so embarrassed to see his clothes wet from piss. Even though the 2nd floor appreciates him for his decision, he feels so terrible that he asks them to get out of his room. As soon as they get out of the room, Jinsu cries, feeling so embarrassed. The following day, the 4th floor gets the king ball and chooses the 2nd floor, and the 6th floor chooses one side of the coin. Whoever guesses wrong about the top side of the coin will get a shock from the taser. She is deviating from the predetermined rule that whoever does not perform the task will get punished, but she insists on doing this, as she is the king. 4th floor flips the coin and rubs it in between her hands. The 2nd floor makes the wrong guess, and it turns out she has to receive the penalty for it. In spite of being severely injured, she slowly sits at the spot and gets unconscious when the 6th floor hits her neck with a taser. Also, she urinated on the floor, for which the 5th floor immediately brought a mop. The 3rd floor now understands that was what happened to him the last day. They have added 50 hours for performing this task to their account. The following day, they play the king game once again, and the 8th floor is the king again. She picks the 2nd floor and the 3rd floor to slap each other in the face until one gives up, but actually the slapping on the face feels so personal. So ultimately, he gives up and receives the taser as a penalty. His pajama stinks with the smell of urine. Suddenly, the 2nd floor knocks on his door, as the 1st floor wants to talk to them. He has noticed that all 3 of the lower floors are being fooled by the top floors, because when the 4th floor flips the coin, she senses which side she's holding up and flips it in her hand silently against the lower floors. Moreover, she is using some trick to choose the 8th floor king each time. Meanwhile, the 4th floor silently picks up the ball with K written on it and rubs some chemicals on it. The following day, the game begins, and as they knew the secret of rigging, the 1st floor is the king now. Last night, when the 4th floor was rubbing the chemical on the K ball, The seventh floor startled her by silently putting his hands on her mouth. Next up, he goes to the first, second, and third floors, and they hold a meeting. They decide to let the upper floor make a mistake, and then they will retaliate. As the king, the first floor chooses the seventh floor and eighth floor and asks the fourth floor to flip the coin as always, but only this time will she use the back of her hand to flip it. As expected, the eighth floor gets the penalty of getting hit by a taser. At first, she refuses to take any kind of punishment, but to prove the game is fair, she agrees to receive the taser shock and falls unconscious. Third floor feels so happy to see her lying on the floor, but it was all his imagination. As soon as the seventh floor counted to 3 and was about to hit the eighth floor, the sixth floor kicked him away. It makes the eighth floor happy, but the sixth floor does not stop there. He takes the taser to the seventh floor and gives him a shock. Sixth floor does not want to keep the game predictable, as this is his way of twisting the plan. In the beginning of the game, the sixth floor enters the big theater, and from the cards on the table, he picks 6 for himself and goes behind the curtain. He undresses in his room and wears the assigned dress. The first night, he only orders a pillow for himself, puts it on the floor, and falls asleep. The scene shifts to the present day, when the seventh floor opens his eyes in the room on the eighth floor. The fourth floor wipes the blood from his face and helps him get up, while the sixth floor is playing guitar and warns him not to be with the people on the lower floor because that's the way the world works. The lower-ranking person works for the upper-ranking person, and he must learn to act like one. Finding himself helpless in the situation, the seventh floor ducks his face as if he agreed. On the other hand, the first, second, third, and fifth floors find out that the upper floor has put the lock on the intercom at the delivery counter. That way, they will not be able to use any items needed outside of their room, including the guns, for their safety. On top of it, the sixth floor comes into each lower floor's room and breaks their intercom with the help of his bat. Now it's evident that the upper floors don't want them to make any purchases at all and overpower the lower floors by all means. But what really hurts them is that they have convinced the seventh floor to be their ally. The third floor has always relied on the seventh floor too much, as he admires him for being the most brainy individual in the game. He reveals for the first time that he is a close friend of the seventh floor. That day, they did not receive their food through the delivery courier either. Suddenly, they see all of them coming downstairs, holding the seventh floor, so as to tell that he is on their side now. Seventh floor starts telling how things will be from now on. They have decided that the clock is at 150 hours now, and they have to add 24 hours each day by doing the assigned tasks. The 4 people on the lower floor will have to earn 6 hours each day, while the upper floors will just assign the task. After completing the 3 hours worth of work, they will receive a coin, and for 2 coins, they will be able to get the food package and water bottle for themselves. They all hear the tyrannical conditions applied to them and try to persuade the seventh floor's conscience to revisit their decision, but their decision is final. The first floor gets so angry and wants to hit the sixth floor, but he kicks him down easily. Second floor steps up to take revenge for the first floor. This time, the arrogant sixth floor stops her with a more powerful taser, and she falls to the ground. That terrifies them. But as soon as the first floor goes near the second floor to pick her up, the sixth floor puts his foot on his bad leg. He begs the sixth floor to leave him, but he leaves after putting him in intense pain. Sixth floor once again explains that they will be the working class and have to accept the new reality. Before starting a new game to play, seventh floor explains that there are multiple ping pong balls in the box. Each ball has a game written on it. They will play the chosen game, and then there will be only one winner. The rest of the losers will get punishment. The punishment is not being touched by the taser, as each time they will be punished differently. The process begins, and the third floor chooses a ball and selects hide and seek to play for the day. Before starting the game, each of the 4 participants is given a choice between their eyes, legs, arms, and tongue. They randomly chose one for each, but none of the players knows what is going to happen, so they tie those chosen body parts to each player. Hence, the second floor gets blinds on her eyes. They tie the tongue of the third floor, the arms of the first floor, and the legs of the fifth floor with the special probe pack. They are supposed to run and hide until the sixth floor finds them and hits them with the spiky strip. Everything is horrible, but that's the game they have to play to survive. The game begins, and they try to hide until the sixth floor counts 10. The second floor had blinds on her eyes, so she could not hide. Then he runs to the first floor and hits him with a spiky belt until he bleeds. Next, he beats the fifth and second floors after finding them, but he almost hit the second floor so much that the seventh floor had to intervene to stop him. According to the game, they have the third floor as the winner, but the rest of the 3 will receive the punishment of the upper floor's choice, in which the third floor will get blinds on his eyes and have a bat to hit the losers. He will swing around and randomly hit anyone. He cries but has to do with what was asked, and finally he blindly hits the first floor, who begins bleeding too much. The third floor immediately removes tape from his face to see the damage, but the seventh floor makes another announcement. Since they have won 26 hours, now they will be given more coins than they decided, which are 9. But first, they will be given paper and a pen to write the number of coins. If their collective numbers exceed 9, they will get no coin for the day. That means they will not even get the food after everything happens to them. Third floor carefully thinks about the number of coins and writes 3 initially, as he was today's winner. But then he changes it to 3. Finally, he writes some numbers and puts them in the box. Their total becomes 7. And each one receives 2 coins, but the third floor gets only 1. The third floor gets so disappointed in the seventh floor as they are no longer friends after his tyrannical behavior today. The next day, they choose the quiz game randomly by picking up a ball. The game requires them to guess the right answer, and like yesterday, the winner will punish the rest of the losers. The game begins with the questioning, and with the initial 10 questions, the third floor gets to guess what the answer is. But in his heart, he wants the second floor to win this round because she is the only one who knows how to fight, and once she has the bat in her hand, she can overpower them. Finally, the second floor gets the hint and guesses the answer. Now, when they put the special probe on the second floor's face, which blinds her vision, everyone looks at her with hope. She begins swinging and hits the bat on the face of the seventh floor. Sixth floor gets ahead, and he hits him too, but that was only the third floor's imagination. In reality, the second floor swung her bat in the hand just as she was instructed, and it randomly hit the third floor, who fell unconscious. What the second floor did was justified, as that was only the third floor's best perception that she could hit anyone with blinds on her eyes. Third floor gets unconscious, and his teammates push him back to his room. He knew they were pushing them lower, and the lower floors were just accepting the punishment. It kept going like that for days until one day when all of them wrote down the number of coins and their collective numbers exceeded 9. According to the rule, they will get no coins for the day, so they have to starve. But that was the moment they realized that the upper floors have snatched enough of them and they have nothing to lose. Hence, when the seventh floor tells them to go back to their rooms without coins, no one moves. Genius seventh floor can sense a violent response in the air, so he snatches the coin pouch from the sixth floor and offers 1 coin to whoever steps up first. It surprises him that no one steps forward, and the first floor whispers in their ears to stay standing and strong. Now on the sixth floor, offer them to give 10 coins if anyone moves ahead and gets them, but the offer will last for 60 seconds only. Fifth floor steps forward to get the coins only after 10 seconds as she has to eat for being diabetic. That's where the third floor knew that they had really stooped too low in the show. Perhaps he can die in the game by jumping down the floor and ending this game. His mind is getting insane, and he gets suicidal thoughts, but unfortunately he cannot get the rope or knife to do it as his intercom is broken too. The third floor hallucinates that night, as if the sixth floor, fourth floor, seventh floor, and eighth floor are talking to him from his room's window and wanting him to stay alive to play their weird games. After a week of playing foolish games, the first floor pushes a note to them where he invites everyone to the first floor using delivery chute. They will hit anyone wanting to enter the room. It was a small attempt, but they can try to claim their status back. Afterwards, they were planning and kept playing useless games, but they were hopeful. Seventh and sixth floors are already bored of the daily games and barely pay any attention. But one day, the seventh floor secretly gave the third floor a message that when they move using the chute, it makes noise. On the other hand, the eighth floor plays golf with the sixth floor in her room, while the sixth floor wants to know if he is happy here, as the eighth floor has everything one can wish for. On the other hand, the third floor tells others that he has received a hint that their delivery chute makes noise, but after the worst treatment they are getting from the seventh floor, no one agrees to trust him any longer. But then one day during the daily games, the first floor complains about his stomach and needs medicine. Seventh floor gets the cue and promises him to do what he can. That day, the third floor waits discreetly for the delivery courier and curls inside up to execute the final scene of the act. He reaches down to the first floor. Meanwhile, the first floor starts screaming that his stomach is badly hurried. Hence, the sixth, seventh, eighth, and fourth floors immediately, so everyone runs to help him on the first floor. Sixth floor is carrying a bat while he gives taser to eighth floor. As the first floor opens the door, he senses someone hiding behind it. Hence, he pushes the door backwards to hit the third floor, and then a fight begins. Third floor and second floor try to overpower sixth floor, but he somehow controls all of them and then puts his taser gun on them. It looks like they have lost again and will have to continue living a miserable life. But when the sixth floor pushes the trigger of his taser gun to hit them, it does not work. That's what the seventh floor did for them by removing the batteries from the taser gun. Looking like the gun is useless, the second floor attacks the sixth floor with all her power. The 2 floor girl has been an efficient fist fighter. Hence, when she arrived in the theater room with her hand gripper, she completed its numbers, read instructions, and after picking up her number 2 card, she entered the show by walking behind the red curtains. As instructed, she changes clothes, And to kill time that night, she keeps doing exercise. The scene shifts to the present day when the second floor ends up tying the hands of the 6th, 7th, 8th, and 4th floors. Then she puts tape on their faces. Now, after many weeks, they finally feel free and have all the power in their hands. This gives them the liberty to take revenge too. Therefore, the first floor goes to the 6th floor and punches his face. Then he tries to hit the 8th floor but cannot do it and starts crying. Not only the 1st floor but the 3rd floor cries too on his liberation day, but then he wipes his tears and walks up to the 7th floor. They have tied his hands and feet, but before putting tape on his face, the 3rd floor wants him to justify his position. Whatever he did to hurt the 4 powerless people was not his wish. The 3rd floor gives him a chance to clear his position, as after all, they were close from the beginning of the show. Moreover, if it were not for him, they would still have been playing the tyrannical game. He even knew that the 3rd floor and his team were making a plan to fight the situation and told him about the delivery chute sound. The 7th floor did not say anything in his defense, except that he is so sorry. So the 3rd floor had to convince the others to untie his hands, as he was forced to be a part of the torture process. They respect the 3rd floor's wishes and free the 7th floor. But with all this drama, they earned so much time that they never expected. Liberation is relaxing, but it is not happy at all. They still feel sad because whatever they do, they will remain on the poor side of this house. One after another, they put the 4th, 6th, and 8th floors in their respective rooms, but they will not be locked from now on. They get a real shock when they enter the 8th floor's room. The 3rd floor gets shocked to see the beautiful things. It looks like they are visiting an exquisite hotel room. They even watch the stuff they never knew of, and the amount of money added up in the 8th floor's account each minute is insane. But they decided not to touch her money and order things. Finally, they get their food and water bottles into the clean room. They eat the food on the table, and the 1st floor craves a little alcohol after the food. The 5th floor knows how to make it, but she forgot the exact recipe. With a bit of hesitation, she asks everyone to buy the recipe for the 8th floor's money, but they are not sure if they can get the recipe. So the 5th floor asks at the intercom, and they show a price for it, meaning that the recipe is available. The 2nd floor removes the tape from the 8th floor's mouth to get permission to spend her money. As an extrovert, she had no objection, but she wanted them to lose her hand tie. The 5th floor buys the recipe and the necessary instruments to make the homemade soju, which is a derivative of alcohol. It gives a nice hangover. Everyone watches her as she takes a sip from the first batch, and then she lets everyone taste it. They enjoy its taste and offer the 7th floor to enjoy it too. They share laughter at the table after quite a while. That night, the 3rd floor feels as if they are on a camping trip. The only difference is they have not got any broth. So like little kids, they pretend to be sipping from the bowl of broth, and each one uses chopsticks to pretend as if they are picking noodles. That activity feels so much fun, and they toast with their bowls. It's late night and they are feeling sleepy. But the 2nd floor raises a question that she thinks is the best time to leave the show. But since the 1st floor earns the lowest amount, he objects because he wants to take home at least $1 billion and wait till he raises that much money. The 2nd floor thinks it's the best time to leave while they have their humanity and will leave with dignity. They have gone so far as to do things that would earn them time. So if they want to earn more time, they cannot get it without violence. This time, the 3rd floor speaks up, saying that he can be violent and take revenge. Hence, the 2nd floor provokes him to prove it, that he can hit the 8th floor so hard who is lying helpless on the room's floor. The 3rd floor gets up with so much anger and energy, and even after trying so hard, he cannot beat her and starts crying. Later that night, 2nd tells the 3rd floor that she misses the clear sky and the real stars beyond this room. And this time, the 3rd floor agrees that the 2nd floor is right because it's their only chance to leave with humanity and dignity. They send the soju through delivery courier to the 7th floor, and in his spare time, he enjoys the drink, while the 1st floor shows tricks that make his daughter happy. They are silently waiting for the time on the clock to run out. They feed the captives so well, and the 3rd floor is so terrified to go closer to the 8th floor when she requests that he itch her face. The time passes by and they do random things like washing up, shaving, washing clothes, etc. until the time comes when they have only one night left to go. They all gather in the common room with clean clothes and clean faces and wish each other a very good night because tomorrow they will be out in the free world. The next morning they wake up and see that the clock has added 38 hours to it. No one knows how they earned so many hours in one night. All the torture they received from the games never added more than 26 hours, but now they have an insane amount of hours and no one knows how it happened. The angry 2nd floor wants to know who did something to add time, but all of them deny they did anything. Now they go to the 4th, 6th, and 8th floors' rooms to find out if they did something that added time. At first, they go to the 4th floor, and the 2nd floor orders men to go out of the room as she wants to check her body for any sign of torture, but they did not do anything to her body. Then the 2nd floor and the 5th floor did the same to the 8th floor, but they found no sign that earned them time. They gather in the common area to find out the reason, as they can never get the time without doing anything, and the 2nd floor is sure that the culprit is one of them. Showrunners added time because there is something happening that they love so much. The next time, they hear screams from the 4th floor's room. This time the clock adds 50 more hours because someone picked a tooth from her face and plugged a cotton swab in her mouth, but she was bleeding heavily. She continuously cries, but she has no idea who did this to her. 3rd floor keeps thinking that something similar happened the first time that added the time, and suddenly something hit his brain. He starts running towards the 6th and 8th floors to confirm and asks everyone to follow. He removes the shoes from the 6th floor's feet and discovers that someone pulled his toenails. His feet are bleeding heavily, but he refuses to tell who did this. But in fact, he also did not know who harmed him and left the interrogation to them. The 2nd floor gets so angry, and initially she suspects that the 7th floor is the culprit, as he was initially one of them. And now to earn more money, he doesn't want to leave this game. One by one, the 2nd floor gets angry at all of them, but no one admits who did this. But the 7th floor twists the plot and returns the question to the 2nd floor. Might it be she who wants more time? But in the end, they need to find out who the culprit is, who needs to earn time for his money. That night, someone bangs on the 3rd floor's door, and he gets so terrified that the attacker might want to get in and pluck his toenails too. He screams to save himself and uses the toilet as a barrier, but this was not what he thought. This was the 2nd floor, locking each one of them in their respective rooms for the rest of the time while she sent food and water for their needs. She only leaves the 5th floor untied and unlocked because she will do as before to feed the rest of the house members. Then she goes to lock the 7th floor's room, and he shuts the door before she could even force it. Even though he was not happy with what she was doing with them, apparently, it was the only way to stop the crime and end their time in the house. He was bored, and there are still 40 hours remaining on the clock. 2nd floor kept sending food and water into their rooms. The 3rd floor receives the food and is very angry at the 2nd floor's bossy act, but all he cares about is the good meal that he is getting. On the other hand, the 5th floor sips soju and listens to the 4th floor when she cries that she feels terrible about getting tied for so many days. With her tender heart, it's too much to listen to her crying. While on the 6th floor, he refuses to eat anything at all, which is necessary to keep him healthy and alive. The 8th floor tries to trick her brain by reminding her that she is so good and she should not be keeping their hands tied. The 5th floor gets so disturbed with their whining and goes to the 2nd floor to request that they just untie their hands. The 2nd floor understands that the 5th floor can't take it anymore, and she does her best to convince the 5th floor that once they untie them, they will be forever under their tyranny. The helpless 5th floor cries while sitting on the stairs when she hallucinates that the 8th floor is freely standing in front of her. She hears her say that the 2nd floor has freed her, and she is also going to each room to free the rest of them. Meanwhile, she hallucinates that the 4th floor is also happily standing in front of her, as the 2nd floor untied her too. They persuade her to free the 6th floor, and she walks towards his room with sheer sympathy in her heart for him. She asks him if he watched the 2nd floor here, as she's untying everyone. It was so surprising from the 6th floor that it was actually happening, and they were finally getting freedom. So he requests the 5th floor to open his hands too, but the 5th floor refuses as she fears the anger of the 2nd floor. Knowing that the 5th floor is in a vulnerable emotional state, he discloses that it was the 2nd floor who pulled his toenails, and if she does not set him free, he will surely get killed. The 2nd floor gets so afraid and hugs the 6th floor in her arms. The 6th floor pretends to be a helpless, miserable guy and seduces the 5th floor with his ways. The next morning, the 5th floor opens her eyes. Knowing that this is their last day at this miserable game show, she looks at the clock screen and it reads, "Happy ending," which gives her immense happiness. Then the 5th floor goes downstairs, where the rest of the participants are making hot dogs and enjoying their time before leaving the show. The swimming pool is finally full of water, and artificial shops in the common room are now serving fresh food. She receives a drink and a burger for herself from the 1st floor guy, and the door to the outside world opens. Everything seems perfect, just as she imagined a happy ending should be, until the 8th floor brings their attention to the flying and bleeding bodies of the 2nd floor in the air. The 2nd floor does not know why she is cursing her, and drops of her blood splatter over the 5th floor's face. Afterwards, everything gets miserable, as the 8th floor is torturing housemates with a taser gun, and the 6th floor is hitting them with a bat. The 5th floor enters the show with grace. After reading the instructions, she walks behind the curtain, changes her dress, and keeps her own dress in the delivery chute. The scene shifts to the present day when, before setting the 6th floor free, she remembers how he seduced her. Now the 8th floor is dancing all over the place with ecstasy, and the 6th floor is tying and hitting the rest of the members. The 5th floor cries with guilt, but sadly she cannot do anything now as they are back to their miserable state. This time, the 6th can't take the risk of being overpowered by anyone among them. Hence, he immediately buys the gun for himself from the common room's delivery chute and goes straight to the 5th floor to thank her for her generosity. He kisses her taped face and starts by interrogating the rest of the 4, which include the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 7th floors, to know who pulled his 8 toenails. Now on the 4th floor, holding the bat in her hand, she wants to know who pulled her teeth too. One by one, starting from the 3rd floor, the 6th floor goes to each one to ask, but nobody confesses to their crime. The 6th floor tells how all the time he not only wanted to punish those who tied him, but he also wanted to kill them. Now, with the newly bought gun, he will play the famous game named Russian Roulette. He starts by loading the barrel with 1 bullet and decides to ask them one by one who pulled his toenails. Starting from the 2nd floor, he asks her, and pulls the trigger, keeping the gun on her leg, but there is no bullet. But he is so angry at her that he starts hitting her with the bat. She heavily bleeds and now hit the 6th floor and moves on to the 7th floor to ask and put the gun on his thighs. Even though the 7th floor denies, the 6th floor does not listen. This time the bullet hits the 7th floor and he gets so injured that he cries and screams in pain. He asks the 4th floor to do the bandage on the 7th floor while the whole situation is so enjoyable for the 8th floor. This time the 6th floor moves to the 1st floor where he already limps and begs to spare his good leg, but the 6th floor wants to know the culprit at all costs. Despite begging and pleading, he is about to pull the trigger, keeping the gun on the 1st floor's thigh, when the 3rd floor stops him by telling him that they have a way of knowing who did the crime by buying the footage of that night. That makes sense since they bought anything with their prize money so far, so before shooting everyone, they must give this a shot. The 8th floor loved the idea and immediately started walking towards her floor to order the footage. The 6th floor follows her but orders the 4th floor to stand as guard on the captives. The 8th floor excitedly asks about the footage on the intercom, and as expected, it is available at a high rate. The 6th floor wanted to watch his footage alone, but the 8th floor refused to leave the room. On the other hand, the 2nd floor asks anyone who committed the crime to confess, as they will know anyway in the next few minutes. Meanwhile, the 8th floor's room lights up as a big theater, and in the projector light, the footage of the 6th room's footage begins. A man enters and puts the medicine on a cloth, then uses it to make the 6th floor senseless. Now the 1st floor's face is clear in the footage, and the 3rd floor has already guessed that the culprit here can only be the 1st floor. The 1st floor starts crying as he confesses that he did this to make them suffer, which made their lives miserable. The footage then shows that the 1st floor pisses on the face of the 6th floor. With his cruel nature, the footage looks perfectly entertaining to the 8th floor, and she keeps laughing, which raises the 6th floor's anger. On the other hand, the 1st floor was also not ready to leave the show, as he wanted to make as much money as he could by putting the upper floor people in misery. At the same time, after finding out the 1st floor is the culprit, the 6th floor burns in anger and runs downstairs to kill him. That does not sound fun to the 8th floor, and she follows him as he runs downstairs, warning the 1st floor that he'll be dead in a minute. But just then, the 8th floor gives him a shock using a high-intensity taser gun. The 6th floor falls from the stairs so badly that his backbone breaks. The 8th floor then comes downstairs and tells her that if she wants to be free, she must forget about killing and taking revenge from the 6th floor. Because killing is not allowed in the show, she took revenge by breaking his bones. Now he can barely move. The 5th floor agrees, and the 8th floor opens her arms. Now she orders the 5th floor to treat the 7th floor's gunshot wound and asks the 4th floor to tie the 6th floor's hands. They drag the 6th floor into his room, and then the 8th floor orders the expensive footage of everyone in her room so that she can watch and enjoy their misery all the time. But all of a sudden, she realizes that she needs something more thrilling and interesting. All the previous games had some fun and drama, and the game runners are pretty bored with them. She needs pure pain and suffering, and thus she orders all the sleep deprivation torture tools from the store. The 4th and 5th floor girls fix the tools on their heads, and to keep the necks upright, they fill the water bucket in their necks. The whole process is very shocking, painful, and tender. The 5th floor keeps obeying the 8th floor like a robot as they are not allowed to free them, because the 8th floor watches their footage all the time in her room. After getting sleep deprived, the 3rd floor hallucinates that the 7th floor has come into his room. He denies that he ever was getting sleep deprivation torture, and now all are free except him. The 7th floor laughs at his misery and dances with the 8th floor in front of his eyes to a romantic song. He hallucinates the 2nd floor coming from under his chair in the 1st floor, joining through the delivery chute. They all sing and dance in front of him, increasing his misery. Then all of a sudden they leave his room just like that. The 8th floor takes pleasure in seeing their misery and feels their suffering. The 4th floor takes advantage of the moment and asks her if they free them of the torture. But that's not the way 8th floor thinks. She wants to paint their misery and express her own feelings through it. She splatters the paint on a big canvas and cries. The 4th floor is all praise for the 8th floor and appreciates the paintings. It's like she can't afford to offend the 8th floor and end up like the rest of the house. Suddenly, the 8th floor feels that she needs a cocoa dog and orders one for herself. But as the 4th floor has to act all praises, she does despite the dog throwing poop in her lap. That day, when the 4th floor goes to the 1st floor, he apologizes for his mistake wholeheartedly. She accepts the apology because she doesn't care for it much, as in exchange for the tooth, the game was extended and she is now able to buy many new teeth with it. But knowing that the 4th floor is serious about the show and wants to earn more, the 1st floor shares a secret that no one knows. From day one, the 1st floor knows that if someone has 1 billion, they can change floors to the one they want. That's why he always wanted 1 billion when everyone held a meeting to decide how long he wanted to stay. 1st floor brings her daughter with a rare disease out of the hospital and asks her to go home. He forcefully discharges her from the hospital by giving her false hope that she would be taken good care of at home. With Joker paint on his face, he faces the rude questions of his friend for acting cruelly by taking his daughter home at such a critical time. But the 1st floor leaves them and stands in the middle of the road with an insurance policy in his hand. He was about to commit suicide when the fast-approaching car stopped just beside him. At the same time, his phone starts ringing, and that's where he agrees to be a participant in the show. On the other hand, the 4th floor tries to keep the 7th floor awake as he is seriously sleep-deprived. She shares the escape plan that the 1st floor told her. Using 1 billion won, anyone can change the room. Moreover, they need to act as a team to throw away the 8th floor's tyrannical reign. She shares the same plan with every person receiving torture and asks if they agree. Everyone agrees. And the 4th floor tells the 7th floor that the 8th floor is now getting crazy as she wants to use the gun for real and splatter blood everywhere. Now they want to find the time to attack the 8th floor as she is barely sleeping these days, and she watches their footage the whole day in her room. 8th floor only comes out in the common room when the sun comes out, and afterward she takes a shower. Only at that time does she put the gun away. 7th floor wants to know if she has any additional weapons, but other than Coco the dog, 8th floor has nothing bought outside her room. Beside the 4th floor, getting ready for the escape plan, she cannot leave the 8th floor as she acts as her servant. The only one left who is free too is on the 5th floor, and she is not in her right mind. 7th floor begs her to convince 5th floor at all costs before the time runs out and they die. Hence, that evening, she takes the 5th floor with her in the room and orders her favorite food. During the conversation, she prepares the 5th floor for the help. It turns out that the 5th floor ended up here because she sold everything of her husband's property. He always cheated on her, and she wanted to lend some money to someone she liked, but the man ran away with all the money, and her husband filed a lawsuit against her. She agrees to help, but only on one secret condition. Finally, it's the sunny day when the 4th floor has to execute the escape plan. But when she reaches the 8th floor's room, 8th floor refuses to get up from the bed as she feels lethargic. With all her convincing power, the 4th floor convinces her to play. And in the meantime, the 5th floor discreetly comes out of her room and frees the 1st floor. She then enters the 2nd floor's room and removes the sleep deprivation equipment. But when they move towards another room, Coco watches them and starts barking. The 4th floor does her best to deflect the 8th floor's attention, and in the meantime, the 5th floor frees the 3rd floor. Now the 8th floor suspects she saw someone on the stairs, and then Coco starts running towards the stairs. The 4th floor even creates a little drama by pretending she has seizures, but the 8th floor does not stop. The 4th floor follows her, while the 5th floor hides in the room on the 6th floor with the 3rd floor. 6th floor starts making weird noises and does not shut his mouth. Hence, the 8th floor finds the culprits free from the torture tools and points her gun at them. Suddenly, the 4th floor realizes that few rich girls humiliated her too in her job. She dreamt of becoming a K-pop star, but now she is only a parking assistant. In a fit of anger, the 4th floor hit the 8th floor with the golf stick and tied her hands and feet. All 6 of them, except the 6th and 8th floors, gather in the common area and cry a lot. They hug each other. But now the 5th floor wants to do what she wants in exchange for helping them. She wants to catastrophe on the 6th floor, and for that, the 5th floor buys all the necessary items in his room to carry out the procedure properly. In his past life, 6th floor has been a manipulative, selfish, and abusive man who does not mind beating anyone to death. Hence the 5th floor catastrophe, and then they move on to perform the final task, which is to switch the rooms as they desire. In spite of using the 8th floor's money to do this, the 1st floor wants to change his room to the 6th floor with his own money. Hence, he spends all his money in his room and only gets a letter in reply, which consists of instructions about buying the other rooms. Each room has its own price, The first floor has the lowest price, while the 8th floor's price is the highest. It turns out they are powerless now and cannot purchase any rooms. They have to stick to their rooms anyway. But after all this suffering, the first floor received nothing, and he started crying nervously. They asked the 7th floor about what they should do now, but the 7th floor remembers that he was a content creator in real life who designed a show based on reality. But his companion makes fun of him for always coming up with cliché ideas. He wants to create something fun and entertaining and does not care about the audience's emotions at all. He disrespects the 7th floor by saying that he is no longer a good content creator and that he can contact him if he ever thinks of an entertaining idea. That guy rejects his pile of scripts and walks away. 7th floor cries so hard as he doesn't know what he should do like the rest of the others. 2nd floor is so angry and feels as if she is betrayed by the showrunners. In her real life, she agrees to help anyone with all her money without knowing who they are. In the show, she offers to do the same. She wants everyone to gather their money and share it with the first floor when they get out. Just as they are about to go out, the first floor picks up the gun and asks them to stop moving ahead and threatens to shoot if anyone moves. Afterwards, he asks the 3rd floor at gunpoint to tie everyone's hands quickly. Now the 8th floor laughs out loud, as this is the type of entertainment she likes. In her real life, she was a failed performance artist. But recently, her popularity dropped, and with her on-street random performance, she only managed to get a bunch of coins. With the twist in the show, the showrunners add an insane amount of time. After tiring everyone, the first floor starts performing his stunts as a joker. At first, he rolls on a single wheel and then makes an announcement about a special performance. He uses the ropes to make arrangements and gets on top of the rope. Holding a stick in his hand, he starts walking on the single rope, but suddenly he falls down and catches the rope. Once again, he resumes walking on the rope, which adds 100 more hours to the time. As he gets in the middle of the rope, he starts jumping on it. One after another, he makes many jumps and feels as if he is swinging in the free air under the clear sky. With his distorted state of mind, he catches the light, thinking as if he is catching the sun. The light and wires fall down and catch fire, while the first floor falls on the rope. He holds himself on the rope for a couple of minutes, but then the first floor falls down into the fire. Everyone is tied and trying to open their hands to help the first floor burning in the fire. Ultimately, the 3rd and 7th floors untie their hands and put out the fire from the first floor's body, but he is critical, needing to be in the hospital immediately. But despite begging to open the door, showrunners do not open it. Instead of ending the time, they add 1,000 hours to the time. 3rd floor begs for any medical aid, but they do not receive it. The 3rd floor wanted to buy any expensive thing from the common room vending machine to end the time, but this time they did not give anything as they wanted to continue it. Its 8th floor understands the showrunner mindset. She cries, saying that they have made the show so entertaining that they will never let them leave. The 5th floor starts resuscitating to keep the first floor alive, but the 3rd floor has only one way to get their freedom. He picks up the gun and starts hitting all the cameras in the common area until everything blacks out. The 2nd floor helps him by hitting the cameras with the golf stick. Suddenly, another delivery chute opens with another camera in it. 3rd floor runs towards it and destroys the last camera using a gunshot. It's a complete blackout and the first floor has still some life in it. After the complete blackout for the showrunners, the time turned to 0 and the door opened. The first floor is taking his last breath, and he apologizes to everyone for what he did. He repents for the greed that brought him to this situation and dies. 3rd floor does not know where to display his anger, so he shoots the rest of the bullets everywhere in sheer anger and comes out of the red curtain. A sharp light and big applause welcome him. No one was in the theater, but he received a letter on the table with the message that he would get his prize money. Then the theater's big screen shows the end. They spent the 75 days in the show, and they were absent from society to a game show full of criminal activities. 3rd floor thinks that no one would believe it if they told what happened to them in the show. Number 3 lives in the same apartment, hiding inside most of the time. He could not get out of the shock of the first floor's death and the uncertainty of life. Now he had the pile of money. Even though the showrunners cut half his prize money for damaging the cameras, but the remaining amount is also sufficient. His body is extremely tired of the psychological and physical torture of all those days, and he sleeps a lot. And when he is not sleeping, he wonders if any of the things that happened were even real. 3rd floor tried to commit suicide but failed, and he also stopped thinking about the showrunner's identity. After everything, he wants to gather all the participants in the game, and the only thing that can intrigue them is to meet, which is the first floor's funeral. So he spends a lot of money to spread the word about his funeral and orders himself a black suit for that day. Finally, the day comes, and the 3rd floor sees the 2nd floor walking in the hall and putting flowers before the picture of the 1st floor. She wants to know if it's only her who came. That's when the 3rd floor takes her to the dining table, where the 5th floor and 4th floor are already waiting. The 3rd floor shares that he met 1st floor's family while he was making arrangements for the funeral. he found and reached his family. They are still thinking that the first floor is working in another country. His family told them that before him, a friend of her husband came and gave them a lifetime worth of money, telling that first floor sent this. From the description of that man, the third floor came to know that it was the seventh floor who helped the first floor's family. The second floor feels guilty for not reaching out to the first floor's family to help them. But since the seventh floor was the smartest of all, he did the right thing. Suddenly, they receive a big flower delivery from the sixth floor for the funeral, but he does not show up. The fifth floor shows them a video of the eighth floor, where she was arrested after destroying an art gallery. She gave all her money in compensation and was then imprisoned. After the funeral, they all wish each other well and go their separate ways without knowing each other's identities. The show ends here.